to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Riley Lachuk. It's noon and 22 degrees in Winnipeg this hour under a mix of sun and clouds. Expect clouds to build in as we head through the afternoon today. Good chance you could see some showers, maybe a thunderstorm a bit later on as well. Forecast high in the city today, 25 degrees. Animal welfare workers have seized 137 dogs from a home north of Winnipeg. Provincial workers removed the dogs last Thursday. The Winnipeg Humane Society is caring for them. CEO Jessica Miller says the shelter is now caring for more dogs than it is designed to handle.
Large removal of animals, be it from backyard breeders, puppy mills, whether it being a mental health situation, puts a tremendous strain on our shelter. We've been at capacity for so long, almost since post-COVID.
Miller says the dogs are not ready to be adopted. She says anyone who wishes to help, though, can make a donation. Miller says she cannot say more about this case while it remains under investigation. Another collision has claimed the life of a cyclist in Winnipeg. It happened Friday at Keniston, south of Waverley. Winnipeg police say the 67-year-old cyclist was speeding when he crashed into the back of a semi-trailer. That semi was parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights on. The victim was rushed to hospital in critical condition but later died. In the U.S., Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has chosen Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz is the governor of Minnesota and is relatively unknown to most U.S. voters. He calls the appointment the thrill of a lifetime. They will make their first appearance together later this afternoon at a rally in Philadelphia. Donald Trump's campaign, meantime, wasted no time in attacking the selection, calling Walz, quote, a dangerous liberal extremist. In the UK, there is some criticism today about how the handling of a recent wave of rioting was held. Far-right groups in the southern city of Plymouth clashed with police. The scene was just one of many across the UK over the last week. More than 400 people have been arrested. Lawmakers have responded with plans to increase police numbers and identify guilty parties behind the unrest. Neil Basu is the UK's former head of county counter-terrorism police. He says harsher measures are needed.
People should look very carefully at Section 1 of the Counter-Terrorism Bill, the Terrorism Act, and its definition. I think we have seen serious acts of violence designed to cause terror to a section of our community which have crossed the line into terrorism.
The violence was sparked by the stabbing deaths of 3 young girls. False reports claim the suspect is an asylum seeker. Police say, though, that the teen was born in Britain. The Bangladeshi parliament is now dissolved following the resignation of the country's prime minister. Sheikh Hasina fled to India after weeks of deadly unrest. Neha Punya has more.
A day after Sheikh Hasina's departure, tens of thousands of Bangladeshis gathered on the streets of Dhaka. Some celebrating Hasina's fall after 15 years in power, others hoping for clarity on what's next. Student leaders have issued an ultimatum to the country's president, saying they will resume their protests if an interim government isn't appointed by today. Students want Muhammad Yunus, a Bangladeshi Nobel laureate, to head the next government, saying they will reject any attempt by the military to be involved in governance. On Monday, the country's army chief said an interim government would be appointed soon, but shared no other details. The opposition, too, is calling for urgent steps to resolve the political uncertainty. Experts say Hasina's fall significantly weakens India's hold in the region, throwing not just Bangladesh, but regional politics into chaos. Neha Punya for CBC News, New Delhi.
Well, to Paris, where the Canadian Olympic Committee has revoked accreditation for Andre de Grasse's personal coach. Raina Ryder can no longer coach athletes at the Paris Olympic Games following allegations of sexual and emotional abuse. UK media is reporting 3 women have filed lawsuits against Ryder in a Florida court. Ryder's lawyer says his client is being denied the right to continue coaching in Paris without due process. Saskatchewan is the latest province to ban cell phones in schools. The province's education minister says too often cell phones are taking students' attention away from what they should be learning. So far this upcoming school year, they won't be permitted during class time from kindergarten right through the grade 12. Other provinces have banned phones in schools, including Alberta, Ontario, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick for the upcoming school year. And Winnipeg's Red and Assiniboine rivers are once again a transit corridor after a new water bus service launched this weekend. Winnipeg Waterways co-owner Will Bedford says it's a good way to get around and a reminder of how crucial the rivers were to Winnipeg's history.
Winnipeg has really been quite an important place for a really long time because of its waterways and its connection to everywhere else because of its waterways. It's like this secret little superhighway right in the middle of everything.
The new service launched Sunday and transported roughly 300 passengers on its first day. That service has stops at several public docks in Winnipeg and runs daily. And that is the CBC News from Winnipeg. I'll have your next local news coming up at 12:30 right here on Radio Noon. In Winnipeg today, we're looking at a 25-degree high. Good chance we could see some showers, maybe a thunderstorm a bit later on today, down to 15 tonight. 24 in Brandon, 21 in Dauphin. Slim chance of some showers in the west today as well, maybe a rumble of thunder. And Thompson's looking at a bit of a wet day. Showers today, winds out of the northeast gusting to 40 and 19 degrees. This is CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to Radio Noon. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten, filling in for Janet Stewart this week. Pretty nice day out there, as Riley was saying. We're shooting for a high of 25 degrees. Nice moderate kind of temperature. Good for gardens, for example, because today's call-in conversation is all about what's growing in your garden or yard or neighborhood, whether you planted it or not. Ash Burkowski from Friends of the Living Prairie Museum will join us to answer your questions about native plants and invasive species from interplanetary gardens or something. But give me a call at 204-780-0893 after the 12:30 news. But first up, another huge seizure of dogs from a rural Manitoba community. The Winnipeg Humane Society is caring for 137 dogs seized from a home just north of Winnipeg this past Thursday. This comes just months after the Winnipeg Humane Society took 68 Maltese dogs into its care after they were found in a Winnipeg home. The Winnipeg Humane Society held a press conference earlier today. Here's its CEO, Jessica Miller.
Large removal of animals, be it from backyard breeders, puppy mills, whether it being a mental health situation, puts a tremendous strain on our shelter. We've been at capacity for so long, almost since post-COVID. Before this recent seizure, we had almost 430 animals in care. That's over 230 in foster care. The maximum capacity of our shelter is about 279 animals. It depends on size and breed, but we are well beyond that now. We now have a total of 611 animals in care. 280 in our shelter alone right now. This not only stretches the space of our shelter, but our staff's capacity. Staff are working extra shifts, coming in on days off. They worked all weekend, this long weekend. They need to feed, medicate, and provide enrichment. The cleaning alone is a monumental task. We've drawn from our large pool of volunteers to also help with animal enrichment and other tasks that we just couldn't do without their support. We have almost 900 volunteers and a staff of 200, so it goes to show the ratio of how much we lean on our volunteers. So how can you help us? At this time, the public can donate. We always need funds to provide this medical care and food to ensure that we have the proper amount of staff to care for these animals. Of course, we want to give you everything we can because you're our storytellers. So we will continue to update you in any way that we can publicly with additional needs, how you can help us, potential fosters in the coming days. We're asking the public to refrain from calling or emailing the WHS as we navigate the ongoing process. We will update our website and social media with information as it arises. Again, how can you help? You can adopt, not shop. We can't speak to the particulars of this case because it's an ongoing investigation with the province. Last time we were able to give you more details as it was an animal services case under the City of Winnipeg, which follows different legislation called the Responsible Pet Ownership Bylaw. But we know Manitoba shelters and rescues are full due to backyard breeders who go unchecked and continue to cause this overpopulation issue in our province. We implore the public, don't buy animals online. This is all about supply and demand. If people are buying them, breeders, puppy mills, will sell them. They'll create them on top of our already flowing shelter, which is just not fair. Why should you adopt from the shelter? There's so many benefits. They come spayed and neutered. There's a cost saving for you there. You get a trial of pet insurance. You get post-adoption support and support from our behavior team, and for free. In the future, we hope to work with the province to strengthen and re-implement the companion animal breeding license program. So this was enacted before in 2012, but due to finances and resources, it was discontinued. So we're looking to reopen the Animal Care Act and talk with the province about what that looks like. We've been having great conversations with the Chief Veterinary Office about this and how we can make it happen again in the future. So we can fully investigate backyard breeding operations and penalize those who are violating the Act.
That was Winnipeg Humane Society CEO Jessica Miller speaking earlier today. And for more on this story, head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Rubik's, Jigsaw, Wordle? Hardly. Get ready, Canada. It's time for another edition of That's Puzzling. Host Pia Chattopadhyay competes against one familiar voice and one clever listener in a battle of brain games devised by puzzle master Peter Brown. That's Puzzling all summer long. Friday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten, filling in for Janet today, and I'm really looking forward to our call-in after the 12:30 news. We want to know what's growing in your garden. Call us and share your bounty. It's all about what's growing around you. You can sob and cry, or you can gloat and laugh. And you can also ask questions about invasive species that might be harming your crop. We want you to call 204-780-0893, or you can text, just to be fancy, at 204-588-7355. Taking a look at the weather. Increasing cloudiness for Winnipeg today, 60% chance of showers and highs of 25. Down to 15 tonight, still that chance of showers and maybe a thunderstorm. And in Brandon today, increasing cloudiness, chance of showers as well, and highs of 24. 60% chance of showers in the Brandon region and 13 tonight. And looking up north in the Thompson region today, showers, risk of a thunderstorm, and local smoke with a high of 19 today and down to 8 degrees tomorrow. Looking at some temperatures around the province right now. Brandon is 24, Churchill is 11, 21 in Dauphin, 21 in Gimli, The Paw is 17, Thompson 15, and in Winnipeg it's 24 degrees. It's just coming up to 14 minutes after 12 o'clock. Today, a rap debut for two Inuit elders, Julie Ivala and Kumu McLister both live in Ottawa now, and a video of their breakout song will premiere at the Asanabaka Festival celebrating Indigenous film and media arts. As they told the CBC, it all began with answering an ad.
I've never rapped before. My husband saw this ad about they're looking for rap singers, elder rap singers. I said, there's no such thing as elder rap singers. So I didn't really look at it, and then my husband mentioned it again, and sure, should try it out. I put my name in, not knowing that I'll be one of the people selected. And then as soon as we got selected, we were meeting at this place. So I saw Julia. I said, everything's going to be fine. It's going to work out. Yes.
Okay.
We went to school together.
Well, same thing with me. I saw it on Facebook, the advertisement. I ignored it because I'm not interested. I don't do rap. A friend called me and see if I want to check it out. So I said, sure, why not? I checked it out, and there I went in, and we got together, and I was same thing with Kumu. Inuit elders don't do rap. They do ayaya.
We were brainstorming, writing all these things in our language, and when I was writing the stuff down, I was writing it in syllabics, which is our language. They were writing it in English. Were you in English?
Yeah.
Anyways, I prefer my language, and I hopefully to carry it on. That's what my main concern was. In Inuit, it's our first mother tongue, and hopefully it's going to keep carrying on, younger generation to keep talking their own tongue. That was my main concern.
I just blend right in. Once I heard the music, that was it. I can dance with it. And I love the lyrics because it came from our traditional knowledge. And we work together to put it together. Yeah.
Julie Ivala and Kumu McLister are two Inuit elders who live in Ottawa. Their video is part of opening night at the Asanigba Film and Media Arts Festival. That's tonight. Time for a tune. Noah Durksen, a look back on relationships that just seemed to drift apart. And those feelings became his latest single. It's called Through It All.
I wake up in the morning, the sun is shining bright. The birds are singing way up in the sky. Coffee's on the table, there's a kindness in your eyes. I get the urge for leaving, I could not tell you why. Pack myself a suitcase, up and gone again, leaving you behind. I know it starts to weigh thin, but hearts were made for roaming, and you're with me where I go. It's the car fed, sleeping by your side. But the world has got a funny way of sneaking up behind. Your brother called this morning, you dropped down to the floor. You're needing my shoulder, but I ain't here no more. Yeah, I come home to you in the middle of the night, and you stay up so late with arms open wide. We got faults, we got failures, we stumble and we fall, but still you're the one I love through it all. Yeah, we'll pick it up where we left off, and we'll work it out, and we'll be better off, 'cause you gotta know there's nowhere else I'd rather be. And I come home to you in the middle of the night, and you stay up so late with arms open wide. And we got faults and we got failures, we stumble and we fall, but still you're the one I love through it all. Yeah, you're the one I love through it all.
Noah Durksen with Through It All. Well, there's a New York City legend that suggests that in 1626, Manhattan was purchased from the Lenape tribe in exchange for beads and trinkets worth $24. Composer Brent Michael Davids wrote an opera to dispel this myth. Davids is Munsee Lenape and Mohican. His work has been performed around the world, including in the Lenape homeland of New York City at venues like Carnegie Hall, the Joyce Theatre, and Lincoln Center. Here he is talking to Unreserved host Rosanna Deerchild about creating his opera.
As a joke, I just said, laughingly said, let's do The Purchase of Manhattan, knowing that it's a total mythology. But a lot of people in New York actually believe it, so I thought it'd be fun, to just poke a stick in that bear's eye, I suppose. So then I wrote this concert opera, Purchase of Manhattan. And then also we charged $24 as a ticket price, just tongue-in-cheek, owing to the mythology. The idea was to create this theatrical kind of musical work, which was very attractive, so people would like it. They would be moved by it and come to hear it. And they want to pay the $24 and get in to see, what they're thinking is The Purchase of Manhattan, composed by a Lenape composer. But then what they would hear when they get into the seats and listen to it, they would hear that The Purchase of Manhattan is total mythology. It never happened. All the land was stolen. And by the way, here's some images of what happened afterwards, and some of the destruction and the diaspora and the genocidal events are all sung about in this work. So it's kind of a bait and switch in a way, like, come see The Purchase of Manhattan for $24, but then when you're there, you actually learn the truth, the sobering truth about what really happened.
And here's a little bit of what composer Brent Michael Davids' opera sounds like. That's just a taste of Brent Michael Davids' opera, The Purchase of Manhattan. And we were talking to him through the Unreserved promo. You're listening to CBC Radio Noon. And of course, we're just coming up to your Olympic report.
Welcome to your Olympic Games report. I'm Amber Giro. Happening now, Canada's men's basketball team is hoping to stay in the game as they face France in the quarterfinals. Canada has been undefeated thus far in the tournament, but appears to be having a tough time fending off the host team. The CBC's Mandy Sham joins me live. Mandy, break down what's happening on the hardwood.
Amber, this has without a doubt been the toughest matchup for the Canadians in these Olympics. They're currently down 46-56. The French started with a forceful lead thanks to Isaiah Cordinier and Victor Wembanyama. And Canada spent most of this game dragging its feet, trying to catch up. Now, the Canadians excelled in their group stage games because they really shine offensively and they've put up a great defense all throughout, taking advantage of turnovers to apply pressure on the court. But today, they haven't been able to contend with a relentless French attack, spurred on, by the way, by 20,000 fans. And they've also barely been able to attack the paint. Part of that is due to France's solid defense and the pair of 7-foot-plus NBA players that have proved insurmountable for the Canadian team. Now, remember, three-pointers are not Canada's strong suit. You had Jamal Murray making a valiant effort to sink those shots, and star guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trying to close in on that point deficit single-handedly. But the synergy of this team today isn't on par with that of France. Now, it's also important to mention that this team was hoping to deliver payback for their loss against France 24 years ago. That's the last time the Canadians made it to the Olympics in Sydney, and in those games, they lost to France in the quarterfinal game. So here we are now, Canada facing France yet again on their home turf, and as the clock counts down, that redemption and this team's hopes of making it to the podium are looking less and less likely, Amber.
Thank you, Mandy.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Mandy Sham. 3 members of Canada's relay team have now all advanced to the men's 200-meter semifinals.
It's Brendan Rodney in the lead right now. He's got a step on Lavelle of Jamaica as they come to the line, popping hard. It's Rodney first, 20:42 unofficially. And the Canadian is going on to the semifinals at the Olympic Games in Paris.
Moments later, Etobicoke, Ontario's Brendan Rodney was joined by teammate Aaron Brown. Both finished with times of 20.42 seconds in their individual heats. They will join teammate Andre DeGrasse, who advanced yesterday for the 200-meter semifinals tomorrow. Canada is looking to pick up its first ever medal in women's hammer throw. Richmond, BC's Cameron Rogers will take aim in about a half an hour. Rogers is the reigning world champion and the top-ranked hammer thrower around the world. However, she finished 5th in Tokyo 2021 in what was her Olympic debut. On Sunday, Nanaimo, BC's Ethan Katzberg became the first Canadian ever to win gold in the hammer throw event. He was also the first Canadian to medal in the event since the Games in Stockholm in 1912. Every Olympics features some fascinating age extremes. Paris is no different. There are competitors in their 60s in events like equestrian and table tennis, and then there's the teenagers, including the youngest member of Team Canada. Scott Regier has her story.
I've been watching you for some time.
That is the sound of, ukulele in hand, Faye DeFazio Ebert singing Billie Eilish's Ocean Eyes. Today, Fazio Ebert had her eyes on the Olympic skateboarding podium, but the Toronto native failed to put down a full run and thus crashed out in the preliminaries of the women's park event. Despite the disappointing showing, Faye took time to thank her mom Elizabeth and her dad Andrew for being behind her.
They helped me so much. My mom comes to all the contests and she's been here along the way. And when I was younger, she always took me skateboarding. And it's so sick to have such supportive parents because I probably wouldn't be where I am.
It is sick to think what Faye could be capable of at the LA Games, where she could be an Olympic veteran at age 18. As it is, she is Canada's youngest Olympian in 60 years and one of the few who could also probably make the podium in ukulele. Scott Regier, CBC Sports.
Awesome story. And an update on the medal standings for Paris 2024. Canada has 17 medals in total, 5 gold, 4 silver, and 8 bronze. Canada is currently in 11th place overall. The People's Republic of China is first with 22 gold medals, followed by the United States with 21 gold medals, then France and Australia with 13 each. In terms of overall medals, the U.S. continues to lead the pack with 79. And that is your Olympic Games report. I'm Amber Giro.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Riley Lachuk. At 12:30, it's 23 degrees in Winnipeg, a mix of sun and clouds. This hour, we're looking at a slim chance we could see some showers as we head through the day today. Maybe a thunderstorm as well with a high of 25 degrees. Well, for the second time in 3 months, animal welfare workers have seized a large number of dogs in the Winnipeg area. Provincial workers removed 137 dogs on Thursday from a home north of the city. In May, city workers removed 68 dogs from a home in Winnipeg. Jessica Miller is the CEO of the Winnipeg Humane Society. She says a weakening demand for dogs or mental health issues may be factors in seizures like these.
We're seizing a lot of these animals that have nowhere to go. We're seeing them dumped on the side of the highway because some backyard breeders are not selling them. And so it's definitely hard to say exactly what's gone on when we're trying to piece together, but it seems like it's a combination of all of those things happening.
Miller says the dogs are not ready to be adopted. She says anyone who wishes to help can make a donation. She isn't able to say more about the case, though, while it remains under investigation. RCMP say a family and their 2 dogs are safe after being stranded in a boat in high winds in northern Manitoba. Police were called about the family on Friday evening. They were out on Clearwater Lake when police say the boat they were in broke down. The man, his wife, an infant son, and 2 dogs were found drifting in the dark with high winds and waves more than a meter high. RCMP found their boat close to a reef and towed them back to shore. They were not physically injured. South of the border, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has chosen Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz is the governor of Minnesota and is relatively unknown to most U.S. voters. He calls the appointment the thrill of a lifetime. They'll make their first appearance together this afternoon at a rally in Philadelphia. Well, to Bangladesh, where the country's president has dissolved parliament, clearing the way for new elections to replace Sheikh Hasina. The longtime prime minister resigned and fled to India yesterday following weeks of deadly anti-government demonstrations. This man pulls a rickshaw in Dhaka. He says he just wants order to be restored. He says working class people just want to live in peace. The army is promising to appoint an interim government. Student protest leaders say they will resume their demonstrations if that does not happen soon. And damage is being assessed in Calgary today after a storm brought intense hail and rain.
Wow, it's hailing heavily here. Oh my God.
Hail and heavy rain came down so hard it brought parts of the ceiling down in Calgary's International Airport. It caused the airport roof to leak as well. The Environment Canada warned that the storm is capable of producing up to baseball-sized hail. Now, the airport is still experiencing delays in Calgary, and travelers headed to or from that city are asked to check for flight updates before they leave.
Thank you very much, Riley.
No problem.
I have a question for you, though.
Okay.
Are you a gardener?
My parents are.
Oh, right.
I haven't successfully gardened yet.
Garden-averse, are we? What's your favorite flower?
I don't know. That's a good one.
Say rose. They smell so nice.
Roses.
They smell so nice. The reason I mention is because we are going to ask people about weird stuff in their garden, especially if you're not a gardener. It's something grows and you think like, what? Is that a weed? Is that not a weed?
Well, the flowers on my balcony died already, so.
Oh, that's over. It's over for Riley, but there's plenty left for the rest of us. Thank you very much, Riley. Talk to you later, maybe. As I was saying to Riley, we want to know what's growing in your garden or your yard or your neighborhood. It's been a really prolific growing season in Manitoba with early rain, greenhouse-like temperatures, even more than greenhouse-like in some areas. And sometimes a sprout sneaks in that you just didn't plan for. And so how do you tell if it's a native plant or an invasive species? Ash Burkowski is with Friends of the Living Prairie Museum, and they join us now. And we want you to join our conversation. You can just tell us about your garden, or you can tell us about a weird plant popping up in your neighborhood that you're curious about. And maybe you just wonder which native plants you should let flourish in your yard. or just gloat. If you've got the garden of the neighborhood, we want to hear about it. Give us a call, 204-780-0893, or if you'd rather text, you can text us at 204-588-7355. And it's nice to welcome Ash to the studio. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. So right off the top, what sort of native plants might people be spotting in their neighborhoods right now? What's the peak season for in the native variety?
Right now, typically, there's not going to be a lot in people's yards, unfortunately, just because native species aren't really very common in Winnipeg, on our boulevards and our yards, in most urban spaces. Although, I mean, there are a few. Unfortunately, they're not ones that people tend to gravitate towards, but one that actually blooms in the spring is silverweed.
Oh.
And it sounds like it's a weed. It does grow, like it does spread.
Yeah.
But it's on a lot of our boulevards here in Winnipeg, especially our moister boulevards in full sun.
Right.
So it spreads like strawberries do with those little runners on the
Right.
ground. And in the spring, it has delightful little lemon yellow flowers, and it doesn't need to really be mowed because it doesn't grow very high at all.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Nothing, but I think the word weed bothers a lot of people, and the fact that it spreads. Some people want things that spread, and some people don't. So it's kind of
So as a native plant, would people maybe use that instead of a lawn? Is that suitable for that kind of thing?
Yeah, or for one of their own boulevards where it's sunny and they're having trouble growing grass, they could just put that there instead and just let it spread and grow, and that would fill in the space.
There are some neighborhoods that particularly have sort of switched over from the lawns, or you see their flower gardens aren't petunias, which is kind of stars in mine because they love the heat and you hardly have to water them. But we want to hear from our listeners too, if they have some suggestions of native plants that we could put in our boulevards and our gardens and so on. Give us a call at 204-780-0893 and add to the conversation about gardens at this time of year. And something that's quite different from a native plant is an invasive plant.
Yeah.
So what are the invasive plants that we should be thinking about at this time of year, or what are we seeing?
What we're seeing right now, I think everyone around Winnipeg, especially in back lanes, is seeing those. They're quite beautiful. These long, tall spikes of purple flowers that are bell-shaped and they hang down.
Yeah.
So that's creeping bellflower or Campanula rapunculoides.
Whoa. Rapunculoides?
Rapunculoides,
I like
yes.
that. Okay, rapunculoides.
So we have a native Campanula that has very similar flowers, but the foliage is much more slender.
Right.
But the one that comes from Europe, the creeping bellflower, that one, as its name suggests, creeps underneath the soil, and it has these. They look a lot like carrots if you dig them up. These really, really deep roots, and they can be quite thick, like carrots, like an inch across. And that's where it stores all its energy. And so even if you pull the little plants that come up from it, it'll send many more. Sometimes dozens of shoots just from that one root. So you kind of have to, with creeping bellflower, to get rid of it, you have to dig down and get that. It looks like a parsnip almost. It's white.
And it's quite hard to pull out, I suppose.
Oh yeah, like especially in our clay soils because it's so tough to dig, especially deeper down.
Yeah.
And these can go as deep as 6 feet.
Wow.
So
is there a case for, if you can't beat them, join them or cultivate them? What do they look like after they bloom? Can you mow it?
They're really pretty when they bloom, but I have 83 native species in my yard, and I'm fighting bellflower. So the idea of somebody having a yard full of bellflower kind of horrifies me because I'm kind of trying to keep it at bay. But that's my front yard right now. It's full of bellflower, and it's difficult to get. And I have to work in stages and in steps to get it.
Because you probably have to go underneath the native plants to get to the spreading roots.
In my front yard, thankfully, there's nothing native yet.
Yeah, okay.
But in my backyard, I just went scorched earth and I put mulch all over everything.
Right.
And I've been pulling them and slowly depriving them of light over time, kind of thing. So it's a long process to get rid of it.
And what made you want to have a natural garden yourself?
Well, it was kind of a gradual process. I'm kind of just a little bit of a nature nerd in the first place. And so I used to keep aquariums a long time ago, and I got into the idea of having like aquariums where you have fish and plants and wood that comes from their natural areas. So it's kind of replicating an ecosystem. And then I got a yard. And then I was thinking, well, what could be a low maintenance garden that I don't have to do a lot of weeding, a lot of watering, all of the excess stuff. And I figured, well, I mean, native plants have grown here forever. So that's probably a pretty good idea.
Right.
And it just kind of steamrolled from there.
Yeah, yeah.
I started coming out to the Living Prairie Museum's volunteer seed collecting events in the fall.
Right.
Where we get to go out on the prairie and we help the staff gather seed that's going to be used in restorations around Winnipeg. And then at the end of that, you get to go home with a little bit of the seed yourself.
Yeah.
So that was a good way for me to start with.
Yeah.
Just I get to identify the species at the same time because they teach you.
They teach you,
as you're doing it. So,
and is it hard to get hold of native plants if you want to put them in your garden? Like, can you get them at commercial greenhouses and stuff, or where do you get them?
It's a little bit different than you can't just walk into a Home Depot or walk into your average garden center and usually get them. But we have quite a few native greenhouses here. Well, we have 3. Off the top of my head, we have Prairie Originals, Prairie Flora, and down to the south near Tolstoy, kind of close to the U.S. border, there's also Prairie Shore Botanicals.
Right.
The Living Prairie Museum, we also package up and sell seed as well.
Sure.
There's Skinner Native Seeds in the west that sells seed. So there's options, but it's not as common.
Well, and if you've been thinking, I'm talking to our listeners now, about getting some native plants in your yard, or if your non-native plants are absolutely thriving, you're having a great garden year, give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893, and tell us about your garden. Or you can even text us, 204-588-7355. I want to ask you, since we've got a pause here, about a really strange-looking plant that popped up kind of against our garage where there's some lilies, and this thing grew with these giant leaves, and then it looked almost like it was going to be like a hollyhock or something, but I think it was like burrs or something, and it was 6 feet tall. It was just an awful-looking thing, like, it looked poisonous and evil.
Oh, I mean, that might be burdock.
Oh, maybe,
if it had burrs on it, like actual, inch-size burrs.
Yeah, I feared it, so I didn't get that close, but yeah, it may have been.
Yeah. There's not too many plants that make burrs like that. So that sounds like burdock to me, and that's so it's a biennial, so it has a 2-year life cycle.
Right.
It sends down this very deep taproot into the soil, so it can be hard to get rid of unless you get that taproot out.
Oh,
kind of like a dandelion.
Maybe it was biennial, and I saw it 2 years ago, and I just put it from my mind or something. But we yanked it out, and gave a little more room to the daylilies. I think we have a caller on the line. It's Laura. She has a question about forget-me-nots. Hi, Laura. Is Laura there? Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Tell us about forget-me-nots.
So, when I built a new home a number of years ago, I transplanted lilies of the valley and forget-me-nots from my old garden into the new side yard where it's fairly shady. And they've been great. They took fine, but they're very, very slow to spread out. And I found a package of seeds a year and a half ago that said commercial seeds that said forget-me-nots, and I thought, great, I'll supplement the natural sort of spread with these ones. And I put them right at the front and much more prominently displayed. And they grew, and yes, they were lovely little forget-me-nots, but it seemed like a slightly different version of forget-me-nots because they were a taller, spiky flower. And the challenge is now they're very tall. And as soon as the flowers die, they're left with all these little thistles or burrs, completely unlike the original forget-me-nots. So I'm not sure if I've been scammed or if it's just a different version. I'm kind of perplexed.
To me, that sounds a lot like, I'm trying to remember the name of it.
You forget? You forgot me not.
A little bit, yeah. So there are 2 different types of flowers that are called forget-me-nots, and the one that you're talking about is considered an invasive species. So it's not that you were scammed. It's just that this is why I use the name Campanula rapunculoides, which is its botanical Latin name, is because when we use common names, sometimes it will get us confused with other flowers because another flower can also be called a forget-me-not, right? And so that's kind of what happened to you. So it wasn't like a scam. It was just not proper labeling.
Yeah.
Right. So what I planted is an invasive sort of wildly spreading plant, and I should rip it all out.
I mean, yeah.
Do you still have the original stuff?
I have some, but I mean, it's just it'll take 3 decades before it gets to the part of my yard where I most want it. So I thought I would speed up the process, but I guess I go back to square one and I'll rip out the stuff I newly planted.
Rip out the new stuff, but the old stuff, you can go online and just do a quick Google and see if you can find the actual, because I can't remember the Latin name of it, otherwise I'd tell you.
Right.
But just find it, and then you can Google seeds for that, and then you'll get the one that you want.
Super. Thanks for your help, then.
Well, and thank you for combining all our questions of invasive species and how your garden is doing. That's absolutely fantastic, Laura. Thanks so much for calling.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And give us a call. We've got a few minutes left, 204-780-0893 if you have any questions for Ash, or if you want to share some information about how you've done with your forget-me-nots and how you remember the Latin names. But what was the other one? Rincidadincliucidus?
Campanula rapunculoides.
Yes, rapunculoides. I will never forget that now. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. So how has your garden gone this year? Because I was saying it was so wet, and then it was so hot.
Yep.
Our tomatoes are sad. They're like boiled.
I actually injured my foot early in the season, so I didn't get my vegetable garden in.
Oh, too bad.
But I have my native plant garden, 83 native species in my yard.
Yeah.
And the way that I plant them is that I take advantage of the dry spots in my yard, the wet spots in my yard. So I plant plants in areas that they appreciate those things. So this year hasn't affected them at all. The stuff that I planted last year that were seedlings are doing really, really well. They're just flourishing. So the bees are all over everything. The butterflies are in my yard. It looks great.
So it's been a really good year.
Oh, it's been a great year for my garden. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of gardeners would say that because they finally got the moisture. The last couple of years we had so much drought, it's hard to make things grow. And so the market gardens and so on are looking good. So tell me a little bit more about the nature or the natural species, the native species of Manitoba. Do you have some amazing facts that might surprise people about what it's like to grow them, or how they look when they're growing?
I think people don't understand that we're already growing a lot of native species in our yard to some extent. A lot of
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of nursery centers and garden centers are using specially bred versions of native plants that bigger flowers or different colors or whatever. So we're already kind of using them anyway. Echinacea is one of those coneflowers. Everyone tends to have those in their gardens. We have a native version. I'm trying to think of the other one. Bergamot. Another
bergamot.
One.
That's like Earl Grey tea or what?
That's the orange, but the leaves actually have like an oregano thyme sort of flavor to them, so you can actually use them as a replacement. But it's also known as bee balm, and you see it a lot of times in the garden
And
centers.
what does that look like? Bee balm?
It's got usually the wild type is kind of a pom-pom shaped sort of flower that has like individual little like tube-like structures coming off of it. Hummingbirds actually really like the flowers because their beaks will be able to get down into the little tube-like structure.
And the bees.
Yes. Yeah.
Hence the name.
Oh, the bumblebees absolutely love it. They're always all over my bergamot in my yard.
Wow. And just get back to the invasive species. I remember at one time something called purple loosestrife.
Yes.
Was you saw it everywhere in all the ditches. People planted it in their yards and so on. But it seems to have been eradicated. Was there a good campaign against that and getting it out?
There was a campaign. That was interesting because I remember that in the 90s because my mom was a gardener too, and she was very she wanted to have purple loosestrife, and she found out it was invasive. She gave up on it. So there was a campaign in the 90s to actually come and pull a lot of it up, but it's still out there. It's kind of bouncing back a little bit, but we've got some other concerns like leafy spurge that are kind of more concerning than purple loosestrife.
Like what?
Leafy spurge.
What's that?
It's a succulent plant that is taking over, especially our sand dune areas, which are very, very rare here in Manitoba. So it's kind of stabilizing the soil and allowing other species to move in instead of letting the sand dunes be open where some specialized species need that open space to grow. And it's also just generally taking over a lot of natural prairie areas. It's very, very invasive and aggressive.
Wow. Okay. And we've just got a couple more minutes, but do give us a call, 204-780-0893. We want to hear about your garden this year and whether you're thinking of incorporating some native plants into your garden because they're lower maintenance, aren't they?
Yeah, a lot of them are. As long as you plant, it's the right plant for the right place. So as long as you plant them where they're going to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you plant a plant that likes wet feet in a dry area, it's not going to be happy with you.
And I guess you can't very well just go out and start digging things out of the sides of ditches and so on?
No, it's not. I mean, I would advocate collecting seed or cuttings even instead of going and digging things up out of the ditch. And then we've got our native plant greenhouses as well. So you can go there instead if you want a full plant.
Well, and we're getting near the end of the gardening season. Is there anything people can do if they're interested in introducing more native plants to their yard?
Absolutely. The fall is an excellent time to plant. So as soon as the hot temperatures start to come down a little bit and we get into just the titch of cool, that's a perfect time to actually go to the garden centers and start clearing them out because the plants will set their roots down in this period before it starts to get cold. And so next spring, when they come back, they're going to bounce back even nicer than if actually you'd planted them kind of in the middle of the summer because they would have struggled with the heat, struggled to put down nice roots. Yeah, so it's actually an ideal time to go and plant right now.
And how did you get interested in the first place?
Like I said, I'm just a science nerd, and this kind of the meandering road that I took down.
Yeah,
and yeah, it just took off.
And what's been your biggest success, would you say, in terms of introducing native plants?
Oh gosh. I mean, the 83 species in my yard, they're all doing so well, and very few of them. 83. Yeah, it kind of fluctuates year after year. I put more species in. Like I'm always growing new stuff. I'm always experimenting with seed. But I think there's this really gross wet area in my yard. Yeah,
it's gross wet.
Yeah, because there's roof right beside me that drips, and instead of getting into having to fix that, I just put a whole bunch of native species there, and instead of this wet muddy hole that used to be there before, it's absolutely just filled with native flowers. I don't have to do anything. They're just there, they grow, and they just amaze me every year.
Oh, that's fantastic. And listen, we've got a text that somebody's just so techno everything, 204-588-7355. Hello, I wanted to send in a list of some of my favorite native prairie plants that are very easy to care for that my mom and I have in our garden: prairie crocus, prairie rose, black-eyed Susan, swampy milkweed, and my very favorite Philadelphia fleabane, which has a very, very beautiful flowers despite its name. There are also many prairie grasses that can be used as beautiful ornamental grasses, but the only name I can remember is little blue stem.
Yeah.
Do you know little blue stem?
Little blue stem.
And what's that?
It's a cute, short little grass, has fuzzy little seed heads in the fall. Tends to turn like a silvery gray just before winter. There's also big blue stem, which is its bigger cousin. Goes about 6 feet and has these. It's also called turkey foot because the seed heads kind of split like three ways.
Yeah.
There's also sargassum grass. There's side oats grama. There's blue grama. There's a lot of native grasses that are really beautiful.
Well, this is a wonderful list that we have here. Well, of course, prairie crocus and prairie rose. I know what that is. Black-eyed Susan, is that a name for? Isn't there another name for black-eyed Susan?
Well, I mean, there's black-eyed. I can give you the Latin name. It's Rudbeckia hirta, but
Rudbeckia.
Rudbeckia. Yeah.
I think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And are you familiar with the Philadelphia fleabane?
Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're blooming right now.
Yeah.
And they tend to like disturb spaces, so they actually do pretty well in gardens. And they have these cute little purple daisy-like flowers, except the petals are really, really thin, but there's a lot of them. And they're just, the plant tends to just bloom profusely. So you'll have one tiny little plant at the base, but then it just sends up this beautiful like bouquet of flowers.
And can you collect seeds from your own plants? Do you do that in the fall?
Oh yeah. I collect from my own plants and also natural areas around Winnipeg as well. And I'll usually these seeds have adapted to our winters really well, so they need a period of moist, cold, like a length of time of that having moist, cold soil.
Right.
So without that, they won't sprout. So generally, I start my seed in December because I'm putting them in the refrigerator before they're planted
in the
out.
Refrigerator?
Yeah, because I'm giving them an artificial winter, basically.
Oh, I see.
And then I bring them out around the time that most seeds would germinate in the spring, and then that's when I plant them out, and so that's when I.
Oh, I see. So you're providing your own little winter inside.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And is there anything that you harvest out of your garden?
Not yet. I have started growing a particular plant called prairie turnip.
Oh, is it like a turnip?
It's one of the traditional First Nations foods.
Yeah.
And so instead of harvesting, because I'm not going to harvest off the prairie, I decided to start getting seeds and growing it in my own garden.
Right.
But they take 5 years to grow to harvesting size. So it's a long-term
That's a
project.
slow turnip you got there.
It's a long-term project, but that's one of the. I'm looking at different types of food plants that were used before, and trying to deliberately bring them into my yard and work with them and see how I can.
What about those tubers with the bellflower? Are those edible?
They are, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they are.
And what would you do? Eat them like carrots?
Basically, they're kind of apparently like parsnips.
Like parsnips?
Yeah, they taste like parsnips.
A vegetable, if I never ate it again as long as I lived, I wouldn't care. But lots of people like parsnips, I'm sure.
And the foliage is edible too. And if people have pets that eat greens, the foliage is really good for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, this sounds like, life handing you lemons and you make parsnips or something.
I mean, to some extent. Some people say, oh, well, it's edible. I guess I should plant more of it in my yard.
Yeah.
And that's kind of maybe not the case. But
well, that's like dandelions, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many all over the place that I don't see the need to plant. But some people are still planting them.
Well,
so.
And sometimes, how much of it is judgment? Like I'm calling this a weed and somebody else is calling it a flower.
Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's just a case of these plants they don't belong here in terms of they are way too aggressive in the way they grow. They're not playing nicely with the plants that were here before, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Right, and that's kind of, in that case, that's where we should consider not growing them deliberately and just harvesting what we can find that's already growing.
But it sounds like there's a lot that are worth growing and you can get them and they're fairly low maintenance.
Yep.
And in 5 years you can have a turnip.
Well, with that one in particular, yes.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Lots of great information. That's fantastic. Ash Burkowski is the website and social media manager with Friends of the Living Prairie Museum. And for more information about the museum and how you can explore Manitoba's tall prairie grasslands, you can visit friendsoflivingprairie.org. Thanks so much, Ash. Thanks for having me. And now in the studio is Chloe Friesen, sitting in the host chair for Up to Speed. Hi, Chloe.
Hello. Good morning. Afternoon. Whoa.
Where are you?
Where am I? I worked the morning yesterday, so I think I might be a bit confused.
And with the blinds down because we're on YouTube. Who knows what's going on
Who
up
knows
there?
what time it is? But coming up this afternoon, Lori, on Up to Speed, residents from 2 personal care homes are going for the gold. We'll take you to the Olympic Games that are taking place at the Simpkins Center and Misericordia Place. And we're going to hear from a very competitive 100-year-old athlete who is taking part in these games.
Oh, good. I still have time to take up a sport, obviously.
You definitely do.
Great.
Stay tuned.
Well, that sounds good. Thanks a lot, Chloe.
You're welcome.
That's Chloe Friesen. She's hosting Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. I'm Lori Hoogstraten. I've been filling in for Janet Stewart today. And I'll be with you the rest of the week. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM. And I've just got time to say thank you very much to May McKillop, Corey Funk, Travis Pedersen, Nellie Gonzalez, Leif Larson. Those are all the people that really put the show on in here. They just open the door, shove me in, sit down, hand me a bunch of papers and say, talk. No, it's not quite like that. But it's certainly lovely, especially when we have guests like Ash Burkowski to come on and share their knowledge. And it's really good to be here in the host chair for a few days. We'll have some fun and learn a lot about the Olympics because that continues to the rest of the week. And we'll have more Radio Noon for you tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.